So let's finish up under the hood here. I'll make sure we get everything disconnected. So only a few more things, so here, check it out. Of course, a couple things that everybody always forgets. You have your throttle cable, so we're gonna disconnect it from the carburetor, disconnect it from the throttle cable bracket so that that's not there. Because we're pulling the entire K-frame, the steering box is actually gonna come down with the K-frame, so we need to disconnect the steering column, and that's gonna be done by, there's a little roll pin right here. So basically gonna punch that roll pin out, and then we're gonna pry the steering column out of the steering box, and that'll get that out of the way. And then we have, you can't really see it right here, but this goes down to the starter. So we're gonna have to disconnect that wire from the starter. And then we got a couple of vacuum lines, and then the fuel line right there. And I think that should basically be it. Oh, we have, this is the, I believe this is the temperature gauge sensor, which goes right there. And we'll have to take that out. And that's pretty much it from up top. Since we're dropping the suspension along with the K-frame, once the wheel is off, basically what we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna remove the brake line from the caliper, so it's attached to the frame. Both upper control arm bolts are gonna come out, so the upper control arm is gonna just basically flop forward. And then from underside, above the up top side, we're gonna take this nut off. This is for the shock, so that when we lower it, the shock will actually come out. We're gonna leave everything attached. We're gonna leave the tire ends are gonna stay attached, the strut rods, sway bar, everything's gonna stay attached to the K-member. It's all just gonna come straight down. Here's a little trick for you when your car's up in the air and you're going to take the wheels off. When you go to use the pry bar, obviously the wheel's gonna turn. Take a milk crate, and what you're gonna do is put the corner of the milk crate right inside one of these little slots. Give it a little bit of pressure there, and what that's gonna do is that's actually gonna hold the wheel while you break the lug nut free. And before you say, yes, I have a compressor, but part of this is a couple of people wanted to see how much of this I could actually do with hand tools rather than using air tools, just to show that the general regular Joe Schmo could do this actual project in their garage. So I do have a compressor. If I need it, I'm gonna use it, but for the most part, I'm gonna see how much of this I can actually do with hand tools. So yes, it's gonna take me a little bit longer, but let's see what I can do here. Don't forget your washer and your rubber your rubber bushing. There you go. Grab a 3/4. You're gonna take your upper control arm bolts out. And don't forget your lock washer. And then your regular. There you go. These are the camber adjustments. So you're gonna grab them on both sides here. Once those are out, you can give a little bit of a tap. And you can see so the bolts are actually coming out here. So these are going to be your upper control arm bolts, both of those. But I'm going to need to put the phone down but I'm going to need to put the camera down to get these out. Make sure you support underneath the lower control arm before you take those bolts out. basically reduces some of the tension. Then you're gonna come in here with a couple of small little pry bars. You're just gonna get behind that, pull that bolt out. There's one. Same thing over here, get behind it, pull that bolt out. There's two. So then these are free. So now you're just gonna take your pry bar and you're gonna go up underneath the control arm, being very careful. You're gonna pry it up and it'll pop out. And same thing on this side. Be very careful of your brake line. So what I do over here is I'll come from the side. Like this. Try to give it a little bit of a wiggle. There it goes. You can't see it, but I can feel it. There it goes. Okay. And once it starts to move, then you can come up underneath and use a little bit of a bigger bar. Again, careful. Sometimes they get stuck in there, so you gotta try to figure out. Alright, well, yeah, this one's gonna be a little pain in my butt. So, alright. We'll get a little bit of a smaller drive wire. Get back into here. Wow, this one's kind of stuck. There it goes. So, you know what we're gonna do is we're gonna wedge that pry bar in there and then use that to pry off of with another pry bar. Or not. Sometimes you just gotta be patient with these things. There it goes. And then it pops out. There you go. That's your upper control arm. Okay. Remember what I said. Take these brakes off. But before we do that, we're gonna want, I don't know if you can see that there. So that right there, the torsion bar goes into the lower control arm right there. While there's still pressure on the lower control arm, we may want to pull this torsion bar out. I'm going to pull this clip out of the torsion bars. We'll pull that spring out, put the tool on it right there, and we're going to hammer it back to pull it out of the control arm. While we're down here, we're going to disconnect the collectors, the header collectors right there. Then we're also going to go way back there, and we're gonna pull the drive shaft out. So we're gonna have to do that. And then because this has an H pipe in it, I'm gonna have to disconnect this, which actually splits the pipe so that the tail shaft of the transmission can drop down. I'm gonna have to disconnect the emergency brake cable. And then over here, as we come over here, we have the speedometer cable, which is right there. We have the shifter linkage. We're gonna have the shifter linkage here. And then we're going to have to disconnect the clutch linkage. Once we do that, we should be good for now. We're gonna save these cross member bolts up here. You can see these, you got one right here and then one right here. We're gonna save those two cross member bolts for last because those two bolts are gonna come out along with the K-frame bolts. So not a whole lot of room under here. I'm gonna start disconnecting this stuff and I'll be back. Well, today's helpers sleeping on the job. All right, we have our torsion bar removal tool on there, but before you do that, you always wanna make sure you take the tension off. So you're gonna go to your lower control arm, and that's your adjustment, that's your torsion bar adjustment screw. You're gonna back that out all the way. That's gonna take all the tension off that torsion bar. All loose. Once that's out, give your tool a little bit of a tap. Coming out a little bit. One more here. There it goes. Popped out. Now the torsion bar is out of the way. Do that to the other side too. Before we punch that roll pin out, pretty much everything else is disconnected here under the hood. We're going to need to go under the dashboard and disconnect the steering column, drop the steering column from below. So let's see what that looks like. So, don't mind the wiring mess underneath here. What we're gonna do here, we're gonna drop these 4 screws, take this plate down. Then there's going to be 2 screws, which we'll look at in a second, that will actually be holding the entire column in. And then if you look over here, what we're going to have to do under here is we're going to have to pull, there's this bolt here, there's these 2 bolts, so you got this bolt, and then if you look, there's this bolt right there that I'm pointing to, right there. So those 4 bolts are gonna have to come out for that plate to drop. Essentially what's gonna happen is that's gonna drop and we're gonna be able to pull the column backwards. So let's have at it. Gonna need to remove the center console. So we're gonna take the shifter knob off. We're gonna take the shifter out, but we're gonna leave the actual shifter box attached to the transmission. So essentially all we need to do is we're gonna remove this top plate here. The console is held in by four bolts. So there's a bolt right there. I believe there's another bolt up front, and there's 2 on the other side. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that and get that out of the way. Well, the console's out. I didn't get a chance to record it because I had to fight with it. But anyway, it was a real tight fit, got it out. So now we're gonna go ahead, pull this up, and we're gonna remove the 2 bolts and pull this whole shifter out of the way. here it goes. All right. And that's the roll pin. Well, that's where the roll pin went, right there. But what we need to do is we need to separate the steering shaft from the steering box. And I've actually found the easiest way to do that is with a pickle fork. Regular pickle fork. What you're gonna do is you get that pickle fork straight down in there and just give it a little pry. See, all we're doing is we're just prying it over. Almost off. And there we go. Steering column is disconnected. There we have it. Steering column is out. Shifter is out. Console obviously is out. Nothing else is attached up here, up at the top. Everything should be disconnected around here. I think the only thing that I'm gonna have to watch for is the neutral safety switch and the reverse lights when I go to drop this down. But everything's disconnected there. That steering box is gonna come down with the K member. That steering shaft is out of the way, good enough for now. Let's head around the other side. So we got the front of the motors off. That's gonna clear the radiator. We got plenty of room here for the alternator to drop down. All this wiring is out of the way. So this is all just gonna come straight. This is all gonna come straight down. There's nothing here, everything's disconnected. This wiring just sits up here. We can move this out of the way. It's literally out of the way, okay? Everything's disconnected. Underneath here, that's all disconnected. We still gotta do the 2 banjo nuts, but I was waiting to do those last. The shocks are gonna drop down through it. So we're gonna have two K member bolts. We're gonna have the one right there, and then the one right there, same on the other side, and then the cross member bolts. And I think that should be it. So let's get these banjo nuts pulled off, and let's get this thing set up so that we can put the jack under it. So we're actually gonna use these, and these are gonna go under the K member, under the transmission. We're gonna secure it all with blocks. Basically, it's just the weight of it just gonna sit on it. So I'll show you how it's gonna get set up in a minute. 4x4 blocks underneath the K member all the way across. So remember, this is just gonna sit on the ground. So the car is gonna come up above it. So as long as the weight is there and it's not hurting anything, it's not like it needs to move around too much here. And then in the back, same thing. So we're up underneath, it's kind of hard to see. So it's up underneath the transmission, goes all the way across. And then there is a block underneath the corner of the oil pan that's not there for any sort of structural support. It's just there basically to keep everything connected. There's no weight that's going to be on that oil pan. All that weight's going to be in the front of the cross member and then in the back here. So all that is doing, again, is just kind of supporting this long 4x4 so that the whole assembly pretty much stays together. And there we go. All the weight is on the back of the transmission there. So this jack's not even connected. It's just there just as a safety precaution. Everything is on the weight there. Again, there's a small little block, but as you can see, there's a little bit of daylight going through there. That's barely just across this one here. Is barely across the corner of the oil pan. It's more, again, there to support this 4x4 that's going across, but all the weight is sitting on top of this, on top of this K member right there. Same thing on this side. You can see, again, underneath the transmission, this jack's not even connected. Neither is that jack stand. Again, these are just here as a just in case. Always the last one. That's it.